Have you ever noticed how your mind refuses to stay quiet? You replay conversations, you rethink decisions, you imagine scenarios that haven't even happened, and no matter how much you try to stop, it keeps going. This is overthinking, and most people believe it's just a bad habit, something you should relax and get over. But overthinking is not random, it has a purpose. Your brain is trying to protect you, because from its perspective, thinking more means making fewer mistakes. If you analyze everything, you won't get hurt, you won't embarrass yourself, you won't lose control. At least, that's the idea. But in reality, overthinking does the opposite. It doesn't protect you, it traps you. Because the more you think, the less you act. And the less you act, the more uncertain you become, which creates even more thinking. This is the loop, and once you're inside it, it's hard to get out. Because overthinking feels productive. It feels like you're doing something, like you're solving a problem. But most of the time, you're not solving anything. You're just circling the same thoughts again and again. So why does this happen? It usually starts with one thing: uncertainty. Your brain hates uncertainty. It wants clear answers, clear outcomes, control. But life doesn't work like that. There are too many variables, too many unknowns. So your brain tries to fill in the gaps. It predicts, it imagines, it prepares for every possible scenario. But instead of giving you clarity, it overwhelms you. Because now you're not dealing with reality. You're dealing with dozens of imagined possibilities. And your brain treats them all as important, even the unlikely ones. That's why overthinking feels exhausting. You're not thinking once. You're thinking in loops, and each loop adds more doubt. Did I say the right thing? What if they misunderstood me? What if I made the wrong choice? And the more you ask these questions, the less confident you feel. Because confidence doesn't come from thinking. It comes from action. But overthinking delays action. And delay creates hesitation. And hesitation feeds anxiety. So now you're not just thinking. You're feeling it. Your body gets involved. Your chest feels tight. Your mind feels crowded. You can't relax. And the worst part, even when nothing is happening, it still feels like something is wrong. Because your brain is constantly searching for problems. And if it doesn't find one, it creates one. That's how powerful this pattern is. But here's something most people don't realize. Overthinking is not about the present. It's about control. You're trying to control outcomes before they happen. You're trying to predict reactions before people respond. You're trying to avoid mistakes before you even act. But that level of control doesn't exist, and chasing it only creates more anxiety. Because the more control you try to have, the more you notice what you can't control, and that makes you think even more. So how do you break this? Not by trying to stop thinking. That doesn't work, because the moment you try to force your mind to be quiet, it gets louder. Instead, you change your relationship with your thoughts. You stop treating every thought as important, because not every thought deserves your attention. Some thoughts are just noise, automatic, repeated, unhelpful. But when you overthink, you treat all of them like signals. And that's the mistake. So the first shift is simple. You notice the thought, but you don't follow it. You don't build a story around it. You let it pass. At first, this feels unnatural, because you're used to engaging with every idea. But over time, you start creating space. Space between you and your thoughts. And in that space, something changes. You realize you are not your thoughts. You are the one observing them. And that gives you control. Not control over everything, but control over your response. And that's what actually matters. Because the goal is not to eliminate thinking. It's to stop being controlled by it. And the moment you stop reacting to every thought, the loop starts to break. You act more. You hesitate less. You trust yourself again. And slowly, your mind becomes quieter. Not because there are no thoughts, but because they no longer control you. And that's the difference between someone who is stuck in their head and someone who is finally free from it. There's another reason overthinking feels so hard to stop. And it has nothing to do with your thoughts themselves. It has to do with your tolerance for discomfort. Most people don't overthink because they want answers. They overthink because they're trying to escape a feeling, uncertainty, embarrassment, rejection, failure. Thinking becomes a way to avoid experiencing those emotions directly. Instead of feeling uncomfortable, you analyze. Instead of taking a risk, you prepare. Instead of acting, you stay in your head. And for a moment, it works, because thinking feels safer than doing. But over time, this creates a problem. You don't build emotional resilience. You don't get used to discomfort. So even small decisions start to feel overwhelming, because you're not just deciding what to do. You're trying to eliminate every possible negative outcome, and that's impossible. Another thing overthinking does is it disconnects you from reality, because real life only happens in the present. But overthinking pulls you into the future, or drags you into the past. You replay what already happened. You predict what might happen, but you're not actually here. And the more time you spend outside the present, the less control you actually have, because you're reacting to things that don't exist yet, or things you can't change anymore. This creates a constant feeling of tension, like something is unfinished, like something needs your attention, even when there's nothing to solve. And that's why your mind doesn't rest. It's constantly scanning, constantly checking, constantly trying to close loops that can't be closed. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Overthinking can become part of your identity. You start seeing yourself as the person who thinks deeply, the one who analyzes everything, the careful one. And that sounds positive, but it can trap you, because now stopping feels like losing control, or becoming careless, or making mistakes. So instead of questioning the pattern, you justify it. You tell yourself, I just need to think this through a bit more. But a bit more never ends, because the goal was never clarity. The goal was certainty, and certainty is something your mind will never fully give you. So what actually works? Not more thinking, but more exposure. You start doing things before you feel fully ready. You make decisions without analyzing every angle. You allow small mistakes to happen, and you let yourself feel the discomfort that comes with it. At first, it feels wrong, because you're breaking your usual pattern, but something important starts to happen. You realize that most of the things you were afraid of don't actually happen, and even when they do, they're not as bad as you imagined. That's how confidence is built, not by thinking your way into certainty, but by acting your way through uncertainty. And the more you do that, the less power your thoughts have over you, because now you have real experience, not imagined scenarios. And experience always beats imagination, every time. So instead of asking, how do I stop overthinking? Ask a different question. What am I avoiding right now? Because behind every overthinking loop, there's usually something simple, a decision you don't want to make, a risk you don't want to take, a feeling you don't want to face, and the moment you turn toward that, instead of away from it, the loop starts to lose its grip, not instantly, but gradually, because you're no longer feeding it. And that's the shift. You stop trying to control everything in your mind and start engaging with real life instead.